welcome back to the Nullified Tech channel here on YouTube, where I've got the TNT takes for you on Survivor 44, Episode 5. That's right, I'm back. I'm your host, Chris, and with me is my co-host, Jake, as always, and we're joined by a very special guest for the very first time here on this channel. I'm sure you may have heard of him. His name is Peridiam. I believe maybe, Peridiam, you're the top content creator on YouTube now for Survivor, like almost 150,000 subs.
Almost. Yeah, no, for sure. I think so. Yeah, been doing it for 5 years. So it's been. Thank you for having me. Just want to say that before anything else, before we start talking about anything else. Just thank you for the invite. I'm always happy to talk Survivor, and so I'm excited to sit down and talk. And hearing that you're down in New Zealand, which is like the most beautiful place I've ever been to, I'm kind of jealous. I wish I was there. But you know what? Let's talk Survivor and get you to 150,000 subs as well. We'll get you up here.
Well, I really appreciate that. We're the new kids on the block with the channel here, but we always love hearing different perspectives, and obviously having you on the show, someone that has been talking about Survivor for the last 5 years. You're clearly very passionate. You put a lot of videos out there. Your latest video, which is the hidden winner of Survivor, was quite interesting. I actually watched it today. What do you think of the new age, Peridium, of Survivor? Jeff came out, I think, last week and said that there isn't such a thing as a winner's edit. Do you buy into the fact that the winner's edit have never existed? Because clearly they're trying to hide the winner a lot more from us these days.
Yeah, so that video is sort of the I like to do this true contenders, which is like trying to predict the winner in the first few episodes, as opposed to like preseason where we have nothing really to work with. And so this one, that video was very much more edit based. I usually don't talk about the editing very much because it's not very fun and it's not very sexy and exciting, and the producers hate it. So I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. But I'm like, honestly, a lot of my analysis for Survivor is based on the editing, and I just don't like to say it. So I try to find nice ways to put it without saying the word edit, the 4-letter curse word. And Jeff saying, I did listen to his On Fire podcast. I've caught up now. I've listened to all 5. And yeah, he said the winner's edit doesn't exist. And I think he just doesn't fully know what we're talking about, or at least what I talk about when I talk about the winner's edit. Because for me, it's like the winner's edit is a nebulous concept that the winner is edited as the winner. And there are definitely commonalities between all the winners in the history of the show, as we've seen, where there are communities that literally dedicate all their time and energy in Survivor to getting to the bottom of the editing. And I don't know if just because people aren't aware of what it's like unconscious bias or whatever. You're not aware it's there, but it's still there. There's something going on in the background. I kind of feel like that's what it is with the winner's edit. The producers may not be aware that they're editing this way or that way, but after enough time, like Jeff said in the latest, or a couple of podcasts ago, that they don't really cast based on archetype. But I'm like, in the new era, and I'm like, I don't know about that. I kind of beg to differ on that. I could still put a lot of these people on Survivor 44 into boxes if I really looked deep enough into why they were cast. I kind of feel like I take a little bit of what Jeff says with a grain of salt. I know the editors too have said they don't fully buy into the winner's edit and all that, but I just think it's more like they're not fully aware of what the fans are talking about. So
it's pattern recognition, right? Because if you've watched the show for 40 plus seasons, you see certain patterns with certain players that when they show us maybe a little bit of their backstory for us to care about them as an individual, we see sometimes a lot of their perspective and the way that they think and move in the game strategically, why they did a certain thing. I mean, I kind of picked up on someone this week that I thought for the first time, I was like, maybe there's something there, and for me personally, I love to make bold claims. I love to throw out winners. I've been wrong horribly for the last 3 seasons of Survivor US. I've been getting it right for Australian Survivor for about 2 seasons in a row. I think I didn't really know where it was going to go this latest Australian Survivor season. And Survivor South Africa is impossible to predict because they like to blindside you, similar to Survivor US when it comes to the winners sometimes. But at the end of it, it's a good whodunit mystery because it does make sense when you go back and look at it again. Right. Jake, I want to welcome you to the podcast as well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, but Chris, you got to give us more credit. We were the only ones who were saying, hey, maybe Gabler. Yeah. We were on to Gabler.
You were the Gabler truthers?
We were.
Yes.
We were. Yeah. We were in the pond with the alligator.
The unicorns
the whole time.
Damn, yeah. Okay. I was totally out on Gabler.
I wouldn't say we
were
were from the
starting
start.
to. Go ahead.
The pre-merge, we were very low on him, and we thought he was the goofy character, the one that was gonna. We even thought he could potentially quit the game at one point because he was struggling so much with.
I thought that too.
Yeah,
exactly. So they threw me off. But then about 2 or 3 episodes into the merge, that's when we started about. It's like, there's something here about Gabler. Like I don't know what
weird little scenes that you're just like, why did they put that in there? Like, what was the point of that if he doesn't win or like at least like make a big move or something?
And Jesse felt too obvious. Jesse felt way too
he
obvious.
did feel too obvious. The one thing I would look at when I go back and I remembering looking at like who's going to win this season. It's got to be Jesse. It's so obviously Jesse. I was convinced it was Jesse going into the finale. The one scene that I remember from 43 was when Jesse is outlining how to blindside somebody, and he's got like on screen like bullet points, like he's got a PowerPoint presentation on the island. And then it ends the scene before they go to tribal council with Gabler undercutting all of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was so weird. Gabler goes up to Carla or something and is like, so Jesse's kind of too big of a threat, isn't he? And they're like, we'll put a pin in that. And I was like, that was so random. I'm like, oh, looking back, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what. Okay, so this is leading to the eventual downfall of. Okay.
It just reminded me a lot of. It kind of reminded me of Tommy. Weirdly, obviously they're
interesting,
extremely different, but just like they would like Gabler is this huge character, and they presented him like that in the pre-merge, but then afterwards they were giving him kind of boring. What?
Everybody wanted to work with him after the merge. People were like, "Oh, we know where Gabler stands. He had one enemy in the game. He voted them out. Now everybody wanted to go to Gabler and say, "Hey, bring Gabler into the vote because he's someone we can rely on." Because it was a complete 180 from what we saw in the pre-merge, and I was like, "The editors are having fun with us here. They could be hiding him in plain sight."
Yeah, is the winner of this season hidden in plain sight?
I don't. It's too early to tell. I really feel like it's too early to tell. But I've definitely, when we get into it, I want to talk about a specific person, and I found the Tika tribe to be very interesting. So we'll get into it, but I want to say hello to a few people here in the live. Christian Gall saying hello to TNT and Peridiam, all the way from Canada. We've got Andre Lee here in the live. Jay, welcome as well. The myth, the man, the legend. It's Peridiam. That is right. And we've got Chris. Winner's editor's dead because I was positive Jesse was going to win last season. Yeah, a lot of people were fooled. So I think they're trying to keep us on our toes for sure, but I don't think it's dead. I do think that I
don't think it's ever died.
No, they do need to tell the story.
Die. The winner's that it cannot die. It just simply, it's like science. It's like it's not dead. It just evolves, and we are just catching up to speed with the reality.
Or the new way of doing a winner's edit competing.
Yeah,
like maybe the rules of the EGIC that we knew before does not apply to the new age of Survivor. And I guarantee you that Survivor is slow to change what they do, because if you look at how people are gaming the game right now by having these challenges in their backyard, 3D printing puzzles and things like that, it shows that they're not very quick to adapt when it comes to the way that they do the game. And then maybe I don't want to put a challenge out there for Jeff, because he is trying a lot these days. He is throwing a lot of things in there, Peridiam.
Yeah, did you hear? Maybe if we see Fall on Your Sword advantage come in next season or the next 2 seasons, this was on the podcast. He was really taken by this idea of like this advantage called Fall on Your Sword, and it's like I don't know how it's going to work, but it's got the makings of what I think an advantage like Jeff would want to introduce, which is like you have to like sacrifice something to like get something heroic after. I don't know what that's going to look like. This is a concept.
Angelina giving up immunity for Rice.
I mean, maybe you have to give up 2 immunity challenges to get an extra, I don't know, something, steal your vote.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I want to talk a little bit about this episode 5. We start off on the Tika tribe. We know that this big move was just made against Sarah. Carolyn did the completely correct thing in changing her vote, because she was at the bottom by the looks of it within the 3 original Tikas, and if there was a vote going to come her way, she was going to go home. But Peridiam, Yam Yam is really offended by this. What did you think of the scene? And more specifically, did you feel like Yam Yam had a case and being upset with Carolyn, because she did the right thing? She saved her own butt in the game at this stage.
Yeah, I thought it was a good move for Carolyn. After last week's episode, I walked out of that tribal council and into this one thinking, Carolyn's got an idol. The fact that she doesn't have to play it is great. She would have been a waste. She was able to basically, she doesn't know 100% what Josh is going to do in that vote with Sarah and Jem Jem. She doesn't know. And, you know, throwing a vote on somebody like Josh when he's probably going to save himself, okay, but what if he puts the vote on you? In the case of Sarah, she didn't play a fake idol, which looking back, okay, we know it wasn't a real idol, so she was gone either way. Probably should have played it. Very ballsy of her not to, but also at the same time, like, Carolyn doesn't vote for the obvious target because I guess Josh is going to play an idol. He's going to be safe. Now Carolyn might not go home because she's put a vote on Sarah. So even if Josh has voted for Carolyn, now there possibly is a 1-1 tie. You never know what's going on. I thought it was a good move. Also, unfortunately, we opened the episode. Jam's like, why didn't you just fill me in? I would have gone with you. But it's like, I mean, you were throwing her as the decoy, and there's a debate. Like, we don't know how much is what exactly the relationship is, but clearly Carolyn felt like it was enough that she didn't want to tell him because it might have blown in her face. And honestly, what is that quote by Tom Westman? Like, make your move tonight and apologies tomorrow. Like,
True.
That's exactly what you do. You make your move and then you come back from camp still in the game. And that's when you apologize. You say, sorry, Jam. By the end of the episode, guess what? They're on good terms. They're ready to roll, and they're in a good spot. So I liked it from Carolyn. I also liked it from Jam. He's allowed to be annoyed, and you know he's got the whole blindside face, fantastic face. Love the shocked. I wasn't sure how much I bought it because I'm like, it's not often we get like a woo blindside face reaction, but Jam gave us a great thumbnail for the future.
Yeah. We had a player in this latest Australian Survivor season that had the Jam reactions to a lot of things going on in the game.
Is it Simon?
Simon, yes.
I watched Australian Survivor. It's good.
Oh, right. Oh,
it's
well,
good.
For the future, we'll get you in on a Australian Survivor podcast at some stage as well. Get you dabbling a bit in the international show. But yeah, I think that it was interesting for me, Jake, that I kind of felt, and I don't know if you felt the same way. You know, we're going to do the non-sexy thing here. We're going to talk about the edit a little bit. But, you know, I felt like we were getting a lot from Yam's case. Like, it was kind of like they wanted us to get behind Yam and feeling annoyed when I was thinking to myself, you don't really have a leg to stand on here.
I actually didn't. I didn't feel that way, but now that you mention it, I can see it because, I mean, he was. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, you're just throwing out her name. You don't want that. Like, this has happened so many times where people flip because they feel disposable by their alliance. So I don't. Yeah, I think it is interesting that they were trying to give some sort of justification for Yam to be upset when.
And the way my brain works. Yeah. The way my brain works is, why are they getting us behind Yam? Why do we need to understand Yam's struggle at this stage?
Why should we care?
Why should we care about Yam being betrayed at this point? You know, if for nothing else, that Yam is going to be a big part of the season, and the Carolyn Yam frenemy relationship is going to continue on to the merge. And obviously, we know how this episode ends up. But you know, it did leave Tika in such an interesting spot because Josh played his idol, but he knew he wasn't safe. So he ended up making a fake idol here to try and force their hand in regards to where they should vote for this next one. And a lot of things went wrong for Josh in this spot, Peridiam, but you can't blame the guy for trying.
No, absolutely not. And I appreciate the fact that he's trying to make a fake idol and not being handed it on a silver platter. Yes. It just goes to show you, like, Jeff, people will still make fake idols. You don't need to make them themselves. And I prefer what Josh is trying to do because not only is it funnier, but it also shows he's thinking outside the box. He's trying to do it himself. And, you know, back in season 17, maybe this would have worked, but it's season 44 now. And we're a little past the beads strung together from the tree mail. As we saw with Jam and Carolyn just sitting there laughing their heads off, almost openly in front of him, and he's actually was openly. Jam's carrying it up, and it's like it's falling apart in his hands, and he's like, and Josh is getting annoyed at him. It's again living in my head rent free. It's one of the funniest moments I've seen in modern Survivor in a long time.
This episode really blindsided me in the sense that we got this backstory from Josh. We understood where he was coming from. We saw suddenly a lot more visibility from him now. Traditionally, that would tell you he's going. Like, he's probably the next person out, Jake. But it ends up not being him going home. But we get this scene between Josh and Yam early on here bonding over their shared experience. Now, I know both of us probably can't relate to what they had to go through, but it is always beautiful to see people connect on these commonalities that they've got in life out there. And it looked for a second there like maybe this Yam Josh alliance could happen.
Yeah, you know, I thought it was interesting that I was thinking when I saw that Josh went over to that tribe, I was like, he could fit in. You know, he could have a chance to bond a bit with them, but it just didn't work out. And so it was interesting to see now that they both are definitely like on different sides. That's when they actually started bonding, not right when he joined the tribe. So okay, I mean, I guess better late than never, but they were about to vote him out. So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
you've got to wonder. Like, I feel like Josh was doing really good work. He was working really hard. Yes, he's done a lot of wrong things as well, lying about his profession when he's already said, he has to be good with his hands in his profession. And they're clearly catching on to him. Even his original Soka tribe said that sometimes he seemed too sneaky, too shut out. Like, he doesn't really connect with them on an emotional level. And that is all things you need to do really well as a Survivor player. But the person who really sunk Josh's game this episode, Peridiam, was none other than Danny. When they went to this journey on the island and we had Danny and Brandon just connecting and being bros, which Carolyn did not appreciate.
Yeah, they I do always wonder, like, what is it? What's the disconnect? How are they this oblivious? Like, this is I love the foreshadowing where they're talking about the tattoos. I think it's foreshadowing, at least with Brandon, and he's got the Achilles tattoo, and I'm like, this scene feels like their Achilles heel almost. And it's like, why would they highlight? He's got all these tattoos, but they highlight the one where he's talking about his Achilles. And I thought, that's pretty clever. I like that. I like that a lot.
And I was like, why? Carolyn has a bunch of tattoos too. Why don't you talk to her about that?
I thought that was very interesting, and she shared the story on Twitter. I was reading her reply about it, and I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting. I wish I had made the edit about why she's got this sleeve tattoo with the sunflower and all that." But again, one of my favorite scenes. I will say, like, right, if you had me on the podcast last week, it would have been a little bit more doom and gloom than this week. I really like this. This was a complete 180 for me with the season. Not the season overall, but from week to week, like, my mood will fluctuate if the episode's good or bad, but like when it comes to talking about the show. So I'm always thankful when I have a good episode I get to come on the podcast, because this episode was giving me a lot of what I love about Survivor. There was strategy, there was these funny moments, lots of funny moments. We sort of got to hear from pretty much everyone. There's a couple of blank spots here and there. And again, like, this wasn't idled and advantage infested. It was this weird, unusual, but kind of harkening back to the old days where they get just a random reward. And it's like, almost like they had a reward challenge without a reward challenge, which I'm okay with. Like, I don't need multiple challenges.
This is better than on Ghost Island when it would just say no game for today.
Like, what am I doing then? Like, why are they watching? Like, why do we need to see this?
This is so much better because, it actually gives them a chance to talk and, in this case, blow up their games because they are completely... it's funny because people always say, and I actually kind of agree that, like, we shouldn't be casting all super fans. We should be casting, some recruits, because you don't want everybody to be, like, doing this, like, meta game where they, like, know all these little intricacies, But this goes to show Danny and Brandon are big fans. They can still make really obvious mistakes.
And it's all like social faux pas, and like, you know, even if they were trying to be including Carolyn and we just didn't see that, it still gave enough of... Carolyn was telling us in private that she felt this way. And there's a reason she felt that way. They weren't stringing those confessionals together out of nothing. Like, she was rubbed the wrong way by them for some reason, and we saw probably a lot of that. So
I feel like the editor did a really good job in showing us that they were ignoring her for the majority of the conversation. They were kind of looking at her as someone that wasn't going to make it to the merge, and I feel like they thought she was not going to get there, and that's never a good thing when you make it that obvious. I think the great Survivor players understand that every single person in the game is important. Even those that may look like they're on the outs, they could be the most important person because you can get them in on a vote. And, Carolyn said at the beginning of this episode that Josh is his smart move. And I called it last week. I said, she probably needs to jump ship to Josh and hope that there is some sort of an alliance with Soka, because the Tika tribe has been decimated at this point. So she could be a very valuable number for Danny and Brandon to bring in. Yes, she's maybe not one of the meat boys, but you need the vote. You need all the votes you can get, because as soon as they go to the merge, they're fearful for a very obvious reason, Peridiam, because a lot of the times the alpha male challenge dominating type of guy, that is normally the merge boot, and they normally go pretty early on after the merge.
Yeah. What are the odds that they get called the meat tray? I heard them say Meat Brigade, did they, or was that something else?
Yeah, it was like Meat Brigade.
I thought, oh, they were this close to Meat Brigade 2.0, which isn't a great thing anyway. You don't really want to be comparing yourself to meat, like, you know, it's meat shielding and brigading people and on a tray. Yeah, I thought this was definitely a weak point for them, and it's weird they loop in Josh, but the way that they said it was like maybe Josh in front of Carolyn, so I'm like, that's odd, because then Carolyn could run back to Josh and be like, they said maybe you, but they're not 100%. I don't know why. So I would think like you'd want to establish, and I think Carolyn has such a great perspective here. She's like, I'm not looking for targets, I'm looking for allies. When you go to the merge, you need to get numbers. The best players generally realize it doesn't really matter. Like, it's anybody but you, but also like plan for the future as well. And so taking people out is important, but that's going to happen regardless. But what isn't going to happen is like, you're not always going to set yourself up to make sure you're not the next boot or the next boot. So you got to find allies at the merge. They're looking at it like, we need to have a bunch of we have a hit list and just take these people out. Who's our hit list? And then we'll form an alliance around who's not on our hit list. And she's like, I want it the other way around. Give me allies. Give me people that I can work with. And you guys are like, basically like, I'm gonna be your goat, take you to the final go to the final 3 and you'll beat me. Like, okay, no thank you, like, not happening. Like, sorry, she's too much of a super fan to know better.
You know, the crazy thing with Carolyn is the first episode in, I was like, no, don't like her, she's all over the place, she's too much for me. And then from the second episode onwards, she has just grown and grown on me every single episode. And now, dare I say, Jake, if she doesn't win the season and she gets deep in it, she could be the fallen angel, because she is bringing all the excitement. She's bringing all the strategy. Like she said, she's already gone and planted a fake idol. She's already found the birdcage idol. She's doing things that people don't see, and they're underestimating her so much at this stage in the game that I think she's the superstar of this season. She could be a new age legend of Survivor.
This is Carolyn's season. At the moment.
Hopefully, I would love it if it stayed that way.
I think it will. I mean, as long as she's still in the game, I don't see a reason why it wouldn't, because it's extremely obvious to me the editors love her, and why wouldn't they? I mean, I think she's just gold. Like, they don't even have to like find, you know, we think of like some boring winners like Tommy, they have to like sift through all these monotonous confessionals. Ugh. I guess this one's the most charismatic, you know. With Carolyn, they're just like, just do any of them, just put all of them in there. You know, it's
sort of like, is this turning into like the George of it all? You know, like, we're left with 35 confessionals of Liz and whoever, and it's like, all right, I guess we'll throw them a bone.
Yeah,
you know, I guess we'll let them say something.
On that note, Carolyn has had 30 confessionals so far this season. And Yam Yam's had 31. So
that's
they are
awesome. Hey.
And for me, for some other reason, when I look at Yam Yam, he's a big personality, but he seems quite tame and normal in comparison to Carolyn. Like, I feel like Carolyn's really been dominating.
I think we get a lot of his thoughts on like all kinds of random stuff. They kind of just insert him. He gets like a 5-second quip of a confessional, and it counts. So that's sort of like what I get.
We can't vote out the trees at
right?
Tribal Council.
Like,
they should have. I'm surprised that they didn't split them up at the beginning of the game to like, okay, clearly Yam Yam is like really entertaining. Carolyn's really entertaining. Let's split them up. Let's make each tribe have like one entertaining person. There was one moment when Carolyn came back from the No Name Island, whatever you want to call it, where Josh, every time he would turn his back, she would look at Jam Jam and go. For anyone that's just listening, I'm just like showing that she's just like making weird faces towards them, showing like, we're good. And it's funny because then Yam Yam immediately is like, now that's the Carolyn I know. We're back on track. And it's so funny because I was just watching this like Survivor compilation or something on YouTube because I was just bored. And there was one, it was a clip from Edge of Extinction where Kelly Wentworth is sitting at camp and Julia randomly turns to her and does the exact same thing as Carolyn, is just like, we're good, making these weird faces at her. And then that's what tips Kelly off that something's wrong. Because, and it's just so funny that like Carolyn, it just goes to show how important it is to like get to know these people in your tribe, because you will actually know, okay, that's a good sign, how they're acting right now. Because and if this was anybody else, this would be a red flag.
I just want to say the thing about Carolyn, and I do want to read some of the lives after this because we've had so many great comments come in. The thing about Carolyn that gets me is that even though she is all over the place, she's got this crazy persona about her, you know, and she seems like she would be very sporadic. She is actually, when it comes to making decisions, she's making very solid decisions in the game. And I think people are finding it hard to read her in some ways. And the fact that Yam Yam puts so much pressure on her here to say, did you get an advantage? Do you have an idol? And she still does not spill the beans. I've got so much respect for that, because I've been saying for a very long time, if you get an advantage, don't tell anyone if you don't have to. Like if you're at the bottom and you absolutely have to throw a Hail Mary and you've got to use it as a tool to leverage, fine. But in her position, there's no benefit for her. You could have argued maybe that would have brought Yam Yam in, but the counter could happen and Yam Yam could be like, now I do need to blindside her. So I feel like it's better for him not to know, and I'm very impressed that she's keeping that away. I do want to bring up a couple of the lives here. Let's have a look at a few of the comments here. Christian Gell saying, Danny and Brandon in a bromance. Who would have seen that coming? We've got Flynn Master saying that actually, at the very least, the winner's edit in the pre-merge doesn't matter as much for the new era. 100% agree with that in some ways. Then also, we had someone here saying that, and I forgot who said that comment, but someone said that the dynamic between Josh and also the rest of the two Tikas are just amazing to watch, because he's this calm persona where they're both over-the-top big characters. And I have to say, I don't like non-elimination episodes. I'm very much against it. But this episode, I didn't mind it because I wasn't ready to see Josh go yet. Because I actually do like Josh as a character. I want to see him make it to the merge, because Peridiam, there's so many great storylines that is going to follow him into the merge, because he still thinks he's very solid with Sokka when we know Sokka was willing to cut him before the merge.
Yeah, they did say I had to refresh myself because I was like trying to map out who is in the hottest water going into the merge coming up. And I was like, where does Josh stand with Sokka? And I had to refresh, and it was they were saying right before the swap happened that Josh was actually the next boot, and it was a solid 4 against him. It was going to be Matt, Franny, Heidi, and Danny against him. So that's not great for him. I don't know what we're going to see with him coming up in this next episode, but I agree. I'm happy. I don't like non-elimination episodes either. And of course, that's a shout out to Australian Survivor. I don't love it. I understand why it has to happen. I'm glad it doesn't happen on a US Survivor. I wish we could get like 90-minute episodes that still led to elimination in US Survivor, because I feel like sometimes it feels too fast. But in the case of this, it's weird, but the medical evacuation episodes tend to be kind of okay for me. Like, we end up cutting out tribal council eliminates kind of some of my least favorite parts of Survivor, which I find them a bit repetitive, and it's all just being very political and just wishy-washy. It's just, you don't get much juice out of it, whereas the confessionals...
It's just all theater.
It's all theater. And I'm like, I don't really need to see Jeff. If he's watching, I hate to say it, but like Jeff's over-the-topness and his weird analogies and metaphors are...
He's become the gargoyle.
Yeah, which I threw into a thumbnail yesterday, and you're going to see it at some point. Gargoyle Jeff is coming out. Yeah. I don't need it. It's not what makes me want to watch the show.
I'm totally with you.
Right. So for me, I'm like, actually, I was looking at the time last night.
And I just want to say, it hurts me. It hurts me to say this about Jeff, because I love Jeff. I mean, I
like the passion.
Jeff.
I love the passion.
Yeah. If you listen to his podcast, you cannot question that he thinks what he's doing is right. It's just, at some point, I just want him to take a step back and look at it from a sense of, like, I am a host, and I need to act like a host in certain places, where if you watch some of the international survivors like JLP on Australian Survivor, I think at the moment as a host, he's doing a better job. You know, because Jeff has become more than the host. So maybe it is time for Jeff to, I don't know, it's very hard. Does he need to take that step into becoming more of the producer, get someone else to be the host, not to go over it? But I feel like Jeff, and this is a question I have for you, Peridiam. I've got this theory that if Jeff ever retires, he's going to retire the show with him, because Jeff believes he is Survivor. And that to me would be a shame, because I think the concept of Survivor should be bigger than Jeff.
I don't know if will he have that power? And how can we take that away from him is the question.
Because it's scary, right?
You don't. Yeah, that's a scary thought. And I never really thought that he would take it down with him if he left, but I do think that's definitely a possibility. I do think he has a big enough ego to want to do that and feel like this is his child. He's been doing this for 40 something seasons, 50 something seasons. He's going to go down with the ship or whatever. But I don't want that to happen. It doesn't need to happen. It could go on. I want to see a Survivor 100 or whatever. Like, it's basically a sport in a way, and it's repetitive. It gets repeated every single season. And as we've seen with the Australian Survivor, South African Survivor, like, these hosts are great. They do a good job. Like, you don't have to be Jeff Probst. You can do it your own way, and the show will keep going. So I hope that doesn't happen. I don't know. I've never heard anything like that. Him taking it down. It's always like, who would replace him? I would hope he doesn't do that.
Because I feel like, he's so involved in every aspect of it now. And and again, this is just me. I don't want to start a rumor online, people like, Jeff's taking the show down. But it's just, I feel like if he doesn't have a great succession plan in place right now, like, how many seasons does Jeff still have? Like, if Jeff suddenly removes himself within the next 5 years or 10 years on the show, which is probably the pocket and what he would still continue to do the show in, if he removes himself, like, who is the next in line to be a host? Do we have somebody? Do we have people that would be able to, from a logistical standpoint, do everything that he does as the showrunner from a production side of it? I don't know if he's got those people lined up and if he's got them trained. He probably would be annoyed by us just talking about him retiring, but I kind of feel like he might just say, oh, that's it, I'm done. We've done this. The show's been awesome for the time it was on. And I really hope he doesn't. Like, this is a plea to Jeff if he ever listens to this. Please make sure that there is succession planning. Please make sure that we continue with Survivor.
It sounds like we need to get some of the biggest names to come together and usurp and create a new concept, just the same as Survivor, but just not call it Survivor. We'll call it something else. But it plays out exactly the same, brings in all the same viewers. It comes on right after the end of Jeff taking the ship with him. I'm basically looking at it like it's season 4 of Succession. So... Did you watch Succession? Have you seen it?
I've seen the first 2 seasons. I haven't seen up to that point, so I need to catch up. But yeah,
they've only one episode right now into season 4. Great show. And if we're talking about the word Succession here with Jeff, don't Logan Roy it. There are better ways to go down than that. So anyway,
there you go. So for those that have watched Succession up until the latest season, you'll probably get that reference. But yeah, again, like I said, I'm a little bit worried about it. I want to talk a little bit about some of the comments that are coming in as well. So Jay's saying, what if Carolyn is the earn the merge boot or any early merge boot? Because at this point, she's got 30 confessionals.
I don't think so.
Only to Yam Yam.
No, I mean, if you look at the last 3 seasons, she's not the kind of player who, again, we're just working off of like history and we could easily be wrong. I said with confidence I didn't think Gabler was going to win. So the hell do we know? But I just feel like she's helmed too much. She's put in too much of a spot right now. And also just strategically, I don't feel like she's set up to be the person who would take the fall. There's so many other players that they would target. Earn the merge boot's usually somebody like who's somewhat in the picture, but not they're not a main character. We saw Sydney, Lydia, like they're there and they have a spot in the hierarchy, but they're not prominent enough. Who was last season? Ellie was actually a bigger one. She was probably the biggest of the 3 Earn the Merge.
But she was the dragon that Gabler had to slay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you
go. So maybe it's going to be Josh.
I think it's Josh.
Has to slay Josh.
Like Heidi, Josh, maybe Kane. I don't know.
I hope not Kane, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I hope not either.
I really like Kane
a lot. Yeah.
Chris saying, I'm glad they put Yam Yam and Carolyn on the same tribe. Carolyn would have been the first boot on any other tribe because they wouldn't value her. Yam Yam understands her, it seems.
They're rigging it for her.
They've rigged it. This conspiracy theorist will come
And like
out.
Ellie was a bit of a main character, I agree with Jay, but she was more of like a main antagonist in the show. She was undermined for like 4 straight episodes. For 4 straight episodes, we were basically watching Carolyn get outplayed. And then it came to a burning halt at the Earn the Merge. So, and I do think we're getting Earn the Merge too, because I was looking at the next time on and they don't have any buffs. So I'm like, all right, this is definitely something like that.
Yeah, Jay's saying make Rob Cisternino the next host. How can you not say Peridiam? Like Peridiam.
I don't know if I could do it. Would I say yes to hosting? God, I don't even know what that looks like. That's a huge question. I mean, if it means to keep Survivor going, I would fall on my sword for it, but I don't know for sure.
If it means I have to live half the year in Fiji, I guess I'll do it.
Yes. I mean, it sounds horrible living in Fiji for half the year, horrible.
Oh, gosh.
Doesn't
Jeff have a house there?
He does. Yeah,
is he living in Boston Rob and Sandra's shack they built in the trees?
He's living in the statue.
Now we know the real reason why they got Boston Rob and Sandra out there, slave labor to build a house for Jeff to live on in the island. But
what if he lives in Boston Rob's head, his giant head? You know, what if that's actually a house in there? We never saw the interior.
Yeah, it could be. We don't know. I'd love to know if it's still out there. But I feel like if they ever move away from Fiji, they need to preserve all of those things. Like, for instance, the Boston Rob head, the Sandra head, the town, the whole town that they build for production. You know, apparently they like pave new roads to this town and build a whole town just for Survivor
like
production.
A theme park.
That should be a theme park if they ever move away from Fiji. I feel like fans like you and I, we would pay to go and visit and see the behind the scenes of production. I think would be a very smart move by Fiji if they did that.
I have looked into how expensive it is to fly to Fiji. It's pretty pricey, at least from the East Coast in the U.S. So if they can pay for the flight over, I'll definitely come over and buy a ticket to Survivorland.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there for people from Fiji if they wanted to make some extra cash if the Survivor ever decided to move on, because at this stage it doesn't look like they would do that. I do want to go to Ratu. I do want to talk a little bit about Ratu because we spoke heavily about Tika so far. My heart was broken for Matthew this episode. He was also somebody that I really enjoyed this season, and just seeing the amount of passion he had for the show. He trained for so long, for so hard. It was heartbreaking to see the scenes that he had here with fellow fans in both Kane and Carson about the injury that he had and the pain that he was in. Peridiam had hope that he could somehow sneak towards the end like a Tyson and just continue on.
Yeah, I felt like, gosh, this guy's so out in front. I wonder why. And I did start to worry, like with the showing his shoulder every other episode. I thought, is this going to be a medevac? Is this really where we're going? They put so much time and effort into this guy's story. And they showed a lot of that scene, with him falling. That was a big deal. That was the thing I remember the most from the end of 43 was this random dude falling off a rock. And it puts a whole new meaning to getting rocked out of Survivor, that's for sure. But I felt bad, and it's tough to reconcile. Like, he must have been in a lot of pain because he clearly wanted to be there really bad, maybe more than anyone I've seen in a long time. This guy he trained to be on the show. He's been a super fan applying or something for like 8 years or whatever. And then to just like get hoisted almost by your own petard, as they say, he kind of is so over adventurous that it comes back to bite him in the butt. I want to say he was looking for crabs on that rock originally, and I was like, was he thinking there might be crabs on the top of the rock maybe? Because people are like giving him a hard time, and I'm like, is there a way to make sense of this, or is it really like, dude, what were you doing? Like, come on, dude, why are you climbing the rock?
Yeah. I just think personally, he kind of reminds me in some ways of myself. Like, I'm an adventurous person. Like, if I go to a holiday place, like I would be that guy that would go climb the trees. I would be like, exploring. And I think that was just by nature, he's someone that loves to explore and live life to the fullest. I mean, we didn't give Cody crap for climbing up a rock and jumping into the water in the previous season. So clearly he's not the only one that did it. It was an unfortunate accident. I think that if he was to come back and play the game again, which I think he's a lock, I think both him and Bruce, I wouldn't be surprised to see them on the same season because we know Bruce will come back. I do think that, he's going to be a lot more careful. We saw it with Nina this season. She injured herself in a challenge in Australian Survivor, got medevac. She came back. She was a lot more scared or reluctant to do certain challenges this season, and sort of spoke about that injury a few times on the season as well. So I think Matthew will be a lot more careful if he does come back in a future season. But Jake, Matthew was your number one pick for the season. He was your winner pick for the season, and you lose him in your draft. It must be a double blow for you coming into this week.
Man, I was really, really sad because once the conversation with him and the doctors and Jeff ended and we went back to Tika, I was like, okay, he's making past this episode at least. And then here comes Jeff on a boat. It's always bad news, Jeff on a boat. And very anticlimactic ending to a really good episode. But yeah, above all, I'm just really sad for him, as somebody that wants to be on the show one day. I can't imagine like you being pretty much the only reason why it's his fault. He's only going to blame himself. That sucks. It just sucks.
I mean, there are definitely worse ways to go, but it's unfortunate. And I guess it is technically a quit. He did technically quit the game at the end of the day, which is a little strange. Jeff did say on his podcast he doesn't consider it a quit. He said it's not a quit to him. I'm like, well, okay, but technically it is. And go to the Survivor wiki. But hey, Jeff, it's whatever. However Jeff wants to interpret it, it works for me. So
I don't personally. I feel like this was very unfortunate what happened to him, and I don't see it as a quit. Like it is a quit, I guess. Yeah. But it's for medical reasons. It's like there was.
It's like Dana in the Philippines. It's like you're in such a rough state. I don't blame him for tapping out. He's still got like 2.5 weeks of this thing, and his arm is in the most pain it's been in 9 days. Like.
And he's not eating. Like, there was a good point that they brought up. Like, he's not getting proper nutrition. Your body needs nutrition to be able to heal whatever it's going through. So I felt like it was just a series of unfortunate events at the same time. And clearly, I mean, he was in pain. The guy was in tears, being out there, having to decide if he wants to play a game. One of the more interesting things for me is I thought about it after the episode. Did he have enough time to go back to Camp Jake and potentially hand that idol to someone else in the game? Like, do we think Matthew's idol is still in the game?
I know from reading an interview that
I thought this was answered.
Matthew said he did not give anybody an idol, but he could be lying. I don't know why he would.
Not the first time.
But Dwight never told us that he gave the idol to Jesse, but he also never said that he didn't explicitly.
Did Matthew say that he didn't give it to anyone? He said explicitly.
He said explicitly. I did.
Okay, I think he probably did.
I agree, but. It's fun to speculate. Maybe he gave it to Carson or Kane or somebody. He did say though, like if he were to have, he would have given it to probably Kane. I think he said Kane or Carson.
Oh, that's a shame.
I thought, he had a really good connection with both Kane and Carson based on this episode, and both of them being there to support him, which was interesting because we saw early on he connected with Brandon, but it seems like that relationship kind of fractured after he didn't back Brandon on the first vote.
The dynamics on that tribe, we really don't.
On Ratu?
Yeah,
we don't. I'm sort of left in the dark with a lot of them.
Like according to
which is not good for the merge. Yeah. Not good for them at the merge.
According to Matthew, from what I read, Brandon and Lauren are really close. Mm-hmm. And Maddie said the same thing after she was voted out in episode 1. Like, Brandon and Lauren are really close. That's why I wanted Brandon out, so I could be closer to Lauren. And so it's like we haven't seen those two interact at all. So that's a little weird. Probably says something about how well they're going to do in the game.
I wonder if we're going to get like a 2-sided merge, or we're going to have 2 possible sides. Because I was sort of trying to size up if we get like a Danny Brandon. I think Lauren would go with Brandon based on what I've heard. Lauren, I honestly don't know where she stands in Ratu. I've heard from both Maddie and now Matthew saying she is with Brandon and Brandon's with her. So I'm like, well, if that's the case, I would imagine they would probably work in with Danny. Is Danny close with Heidi? I don't know. I feel like there would be a 2-2 on Soka with Danny, Heidi, Franny, Matt.
Heidi is close to Danny
and Matt in the middle.
I was just going to say it. I've got a feeling the way it's going to play out is that Franny and Matt will become the Kingmakers, and I feel like it. I see it working this way because
like John and Jacqueline.
Because remember Matt. Yeah, exactly. And you remember like Matt was outed by Danny for this fake idol that he found, which is definitely still in the back of his head. Like, can I really trust this guy? If he wanted to work with me, he would have talked to me. In a way where it wouldn't have been obvious to everyone that I've got an idol on me. So I feel like both of them being the 2 nerdy type of players on that specific tribe, they're going to sort of gravitate more towards the Carsons, the Canes, the Yam Yams, and the Carolines. Like I can kind of see, because at the end of the day, that is still Survivor. It is who do you want to play with, who do you get along with more than anything else. So I can see that happening. I wanted to bring up Flynn Master's comment here because I was thinking in my head, like, can they do like a Philippines season again with some of the Medivac players come back and be captains? And I couldn't remember who the third recent Medivac would have been, but they mentioned Pat, Bruce, and Matthew as a potential 3 captains coming back in a future season. I don't know if we will see that, but Pat left for medical reasons. I feel like he wasn't the healthiest maybe when he was out there. I don't know if he he's older now. I don't know in what condition he would be in now to be able to go there. I felt like wasn't it like high blood pressure or something with his heart when he was out there that wasn't good? Jake, you're muted.
It was with his back.
There we go.
When they came back from the first challenge on the boat. So I think I remember a lot of people were saying like, totally not his fault. Like, he should be given a second chance. He didn't even, get to play more than like 2 days, because totally out of his control. But also we kind of hear now Jeff is saying we're not going to bring back anybody pre 41.
I think he actually walked that back.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
there was some interview he did recent, like before 43 or around 43, where he actually said, "We'll see." Like he gets overzealous with some of his comments.
Okay, well that's good news because I know we all want to see like Angelina, Christian.
Basically, David versus Goliath again.
We just want to see David versus Goliath Part 2. Yeah.
There's so many great players from that season. It'd be a travesty if they didn't get an opportunity to come back. I was fuming when I heard that he wasn't going to go back to players before season 40 because I was like, what, you mean the greatest era of Survivor pre-40? You're not going to bring back some great players that we've not seen come back? Chris says here, poor Jamie is still left in the game with a fake idol that Matthew gave us. She's going to be so confused because she thinks she's got 2 idols. Plus, when the bros meet up, some information gets shared that gives both Jamie and Carson spot away because they both have idols and they now know that Josh has played an idol that you received on this trip. So it's going to be interesting to see if that plays out in the next episode. Do we have one more? I feel like we have one more round before the merge, right?
No. We have the merge. They're
merge
going to do something wonky with the 12 going in, but they're definitely all on the same beach, and they're like the idols that were given to the swap players, I think, are out of the game now. I think those are done. They were going to last for this episode, I guess, but then I don't know. I just thought that was a little.
Yeah,
I didn't love those idols. By the way, last week.
Yeah, I remember it said specifically when all players are living on the same beach, these idols expire. So it's going to be
unless they do something, and they're going to like split them into like 2 groups of 6. And then they're like, you're not all living on the same beach. You're on different beaches, 6 and 6.
They're going to pull Thailand where it's like, I didn't specifically say.
Right. Well, the note said all on the same beach, but you're still on different beaches. I don't know. But I kind of hope they go back, give us a 12-person merge vote. I don't know what they're going to do with the wonky mechanics. Where does Jamie fit into any of this? Like, we see this episode, she's throwing Matt under the bus to Franny. It's like throwing Boston Rob under the bus to Amber. But the funny thing is she's been on the tribe for a couple of days now. You would think she would have gotten the memo. She's still playing it like she's in episode 1 a little, like she just hit the beach with this new tribe and she doesn't really know the social dynamics. And
but Peridiam, you don't get it. You don't get it. She's awesome. Why would people not want to work with her? She's so awesome.
She has a real idol. I mean, why not? Who wouldn't? Her and Matt can work together with their 2 fake idols that they don't know are fake, and Matt has no vote.
Yeah, I don't know. Jamie seems lost in this game a little bit.
It's unfortunate. I don't know. Yeah. She kind of reminds me of Jamie from Survivor China in a way, which is why I think of it. She's got a fake idol at the merge. She doesn't have any allies, but she thinks she's got a potential like path, and we're gonna find out pretty quickly. She could easily be earn the merge boot. I could see her being earned.
Yeah, she's only been to 1 tribal council, and she freaked out when she was.
She did get it correct though. She did get the.
She was able to, skillfully grab the right piece of paper out of a bag.
I think the moment's going to play out. I think the moment's going to play out where she tries to play that fake idol. They're finally going to get it. And the funny thing is, it's going to be non-production led because I've got a massive issue with production planting fake idols in the game. I spoke about it. I don't love it at all. Like I think production is doing, again, like I said, when I say production, probably Jeff more so, is doing too much. Like he's trying to throw so many. We can have 1 or 2 new advantages introduced each season, and I wouldn't care as long as there's like a sort of controlled manner in which we do it. Like I feel like there was a comment made here earlier by someone saying that the new age of Survivor players are not that great. So literally like a lot of these new era players suck. I don't know if it's necessarily the players that suck or if it is production not allowing the players to play the game, because to me, the game has become a bit of a carnival game. If you do so many different things, if the rules of going on the journey continues to change within the same season. There is no way to play within the rules of that season. So it becomes a game of luck. You just have to hope you jump on the boat at the right time to go there. Just giving people advantages where they end up like Drea with so many different advantages doesn't guarantee that we're going to see a big TV moment, because she ended up, well, I guess you could say her being voted out with the most advantages probably in the history of the show is a big TV moment. But I feel like the players themselves are like hamsters on a hamster wheel that Jeff Probst is just spinning really fast. So they didn't even get time to really think about the game or be strategic. And that's also one of the reasons why Peridiam, I know a lot of people have said they want George to go over and play the US show. I don't think George would be, like, again, George, I don't want to underestimate him. He's a great player. He's a great strategist.
Right.
But would he be as effective on Survivor US with all these different twists and things happening consistently? Because I feel like he is at his most effective when he's got time to put strategy in place. And if the game isn't necessarily being changed on him every single round.
I mean, I think he would be effective in the fact that he's very strategic and tactical. And at the end of the day, tactics can usually reign supreme, and it seems like he has a decent social game from what we've seen. He's able to manipulate people to do his bidding, and it makes it feel like it's their bidding. And so whether they have something or not, I guess it comes down to, do they play their advantage correctly against him? Then he might get screwed over. And if there's a ton of advantages, it could lead to George getting screwed over. Look at the Australian Survivor talk for a second, but, they could have easily gotten him out if they had played their two idols correctly at that one vote where I think Sam went home. I think George would have gone, and it's like they just got, there's a lot of luck to that. But there was some skill as to who targeted who and why, and George to have a part in that. Also, the competition's a little bit different, because if you look at George's...
Oh, no. I think we might have just lost Peridiam there for a second. We'll see if he comes back. And it was like at the most interesting part as well.
I know.
I was like hanging on every single word that he was saying at that point when he talked about George. But we'll see if he comes back in a second here to talk about that. I guess the other part I wanted to talk about a little bit here while we're still covering this episode is Breathing with Danny. We finally get him a little bit of a scene in the beginning of him working with his tribe. He seems to be, in my mind, the person who's going to be the ringleader of that side of the alliance. And we see a lot of that coming into this episode as well. So we got you back.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Weird. I don't know what happened. My camera was still going, and I could hear you guys perfectly.
Oh, really? Okay, well, we just lost you as you were
I was talking about
George. Yeah.
I was just saying that when you look at George's both of his games that he's played, he did happen to play with, I would say, a lot of pawns. And I do wonder if you're playing with people who are like super fans of the game and they know a lot about it. Like, he's not going to find the Matts and the Jerrys and the Karas of the world out on American Survivor, which might prove a little bit...
That's my criticism. That was my criticism of this season, because everybody's saying, like, I am the biggest George fan. I was a massive George fan coming into this season.
Him too. I like him too.
But you've got to look at it critically and say, what competition did he have? Because the two biggest players to come back this season was probably Shonny and Haley, and they both wanted to work with him. Yes, he outplayed them. Definitely, he played better than them in the sense that he had his pawns ready. But like you said, I would much prefer to see a season with a bunch of people that all want to win the game than see only one player that dominate over all of them. That to me is not as entertaining. And I think that if he did play the US show, that would be his biggest challenge. But I also don't want to see George come back unless it is for a crossover season where we get the best from Australia, the best from the US, and maybe even throw the best from South Africa in there. They've got some pretty good characters.
I feel like Australian Survivor would be more interested in doing that than US, which I'd be totally fine with, because I feel like Australian Survivor is sort of giving us like what Survivor US was 20 seasons ago, a little bit more, as opposed to now, where I don't know if Australian Survivor will end up where the US is at if they go another, I don't know, 2/3 of the length that the US has gone. So I would like to see, like,
it's going to happen, Peridiam. It's going to happen. You know why? Because I've had a coffee and a lunch with Leroux Bueta from Survivor South Africa, the executive producer, and he has said, if Australia doesn't do it, I'm going to do it. Like, at some point. I like to hear that. Yeah,
he's
the biggest fan. He wants to see it.
His interviews and conversations with Shannon Gus about international. I would like to see it and make it happen. I guarantee you could easily scrounge up 6 to 8 American players who would love to play. Just ship them over to South Africa. I would love to see. Also, I love the format first half for South Africa. It gives me like, again, it reminds me a little bit of older like teenage seasons of US Survivor, which are some of my favorite. The format with a few new modern twists here and there. Maybe cut back if they could on like some of the non-eliminations. I don't love those, but ultimately I'm a fan of it. So I don't know if US is. Jeff doesn't watch like any other shows, and he's considering he's like the brain trust of American Survivor. I don't think he's ever going to be like, I don't know who's selling him on this guy George or Dave or whoever, Luke. Or any of these.
Have you heard the rumors about 45? Have you heard I don't know how credible. I don't know how credible this is, but I've heard rumors. I'm in a couple of fan groups and things like that. It's actually getting quite a lot. I don't know how you listen to everything coming your way, because there'll probably be a lot of information coming your way as well. But there's a group that I'm in, and it's got some former Survivor players in it. And there is a rumor that's coming out that there is an international Survivor player that is being considered for 45. So I don't know if it's true. And my thinking immediately is like, if this happens, it's probably Nina, right? It has to be Nina. Like Nina. I mean, I thought
Nina is probably. If you asked me to put money on any Australian player to play, I would say probably Nina in the US. Yeah, she's got an easy story.
David could, because David's got US citizenship through his wife. Sorry.
If he wants
that's a
to,
potential.
Does he even want to? I don't know what David's.
Why would he want to? Yeah, like why would he want to? Like he's got everything
more
to
money.
Lose. He's got
I don't know.
Maybe
take the Sandra route. Just more money. That's another thing I wish I had seen, and I just finished rewatching Australian Survivor, or watching the finale 2 nights ago. So like, oh man, I really wish Nina could have won. Like I'm happy for Liz, but if I had to pick anyone other than George, I was like, gosh, I really wish George had gone with the Jacuzzi Alliance. I would have taken that, even if it means that he goes out at 4th. They just got to beat Jerry at Final 4. That's not that hard. And if they don't, and they vote him out, well, Nina probably win. Does Nina win? Does Nina beat Liz? I think so. Is that what happens?
I think she beats Liz. Yeah.
If it's a Nina, Jerry, Liz, I know we're spoiling Australian Survivor for people, but whatever.
For people who haven't watched it. Yeah, so apologies for all the Australian Survivor talk. I'm definitely Peridiam. I'm going to get you on for some Australian Survivor talk at some point, because I can just tell have you ever had the opportunity to go on a podcast and talk about
I've never talked about it. I don't think I have. Nothing I'm aware of.
Yeah, we definitely have to sort something out and get you on for like maybe like a season debrief or something on this latest season, because I can tell you've got a lot of things you want to talk about for that. What have we missed on this actual episode? I feel like the only other part maybe is just we continue to see the Franny and also Matt relationship blossoming. They're talking about doing stuff afterwards. I feel like this season for Matt, he's been very he's had a lot of confessionals. He's on our screens a lot, but I do feel like it's a journey and him sort of coming over the breakup of what he just came through and just going through this experience playing the game. I feel like that's the story we're getting from him. Franny seems to be the person for me personally that if one of those two were potentially to go on and win the show, I can see Franny winning, because it seems like everything that Franny's looking, she's more strategic, where we don't get that from Matt. Matt kind of feels like he would fall on his sword, kind of similar to like, well, I guess Boston Rob was never going to fall on his sword for Amber, but it could be similar where the Amber to his Boston Rob is the one who actually is the one to look out for in this season.
I don't know if Rob ever had a chance to fall on his sword. I feel like he probably would if he had to, but he never really had that opportunity. It was more, I'm not sure what it was. I guess I think Lex fell on his sword for Boston Rob.
Yeah,
I think Matt's already won in this game. The prize, her name is Franny.
Oh no!
Except Franny actually likes her, or likes him.
Yeah. Yeah, Franny's on the same tribe as him. That's a huge important part of getting to know people, is being on the same tribe as them before you commit to possibly saying anything else.
But it's interesting because Survivor very rarely, we had on this podcast, we had Mike, obviously he was a taken man when he went out there, but he kind of spoke about the fact, Mike Turner, that when you're out there, you're not in your best state. Like, you're not smelling good. You're like, he doesn't get how anybody would be interested romantically in each other. So clearly there's a very strong connection for them to feel this way. But also they're seeing each other at their worst. Like, they're seeing each other without food. They're seeing each other probably being grumpy in the mornings because, I'm sure you get hangry when you're out there. You're under severe pressure of people trying to vote you out of the game. So if they can find a way to like each other, I do feel like Survivor relationships, as long as it's not the Figgy and who the other, I forgot his name.
Figtails.
Yeah, but as long as it's not Figtails, which it doesn't look like this one is, I feel like it could be something that could have legs down the line. And I've got to say, I'm shipping I'm shipping this romance. Like I'm actually happy we're seeing.
It's one of the less cringy ones. I think it might be one of the only non-cringy. It's not that I don't find it too cringe. Like this isn't Cole and Jessica, if you remember them.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, that
talking
was pretty cringy.
talking about their virginity status.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you.
Or Figgy and Taylor. Gosh, that was a rough time.
Yeah, and you find out that like Taylor had like got somebody pregnant back home.
Even Ozzy and Amanda, that was pretty cringy. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And who were the two that were together on Cochrane's first season?
Keith and Whitney.
Whitney was with someone else.
I think she was trying to get divorced, maybe, or at that point, I don't know, but yeah, not the best. Yeah, they weren't very likable, and they weren't we're getting like this like sort of Gen Z. They're super duper fans of the show. They're adorable. They both kind of like it. They're flirting, but not. And the producer showed up and even had a line in the episode, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, you don't see that.
I don't know if
I've ever seen that.
No, I want to bring up this comment because this reminded me of something that I wanted to talk about, and I almost forgot to talk about it on this podcast. But Jay's bring up, speaking of Mike, unrelated question, but maybe a big reason why Mike lost 42 because he had a poor relationship with Chanel, and she was the first juror, and first jurors are important for winners. And Mike spoke about that. He spoke about the fact that if he could go back, he would have taken Daniel to the merge with him. He wouldn't have betrayed Daniel in that spot because Daniel would have not held it against them. Against them. So that's a really good point. But I wanted to talk about for this season, Carson. I'm getting very strong Mike Turner vibes from him because
loses
Carson,
at the end, final three. Oh.
Yes, the reason I am is because Carson seems to be that person that everybody is connecting with, and he's making very deep connections with them, and he's bonding. We see him and Kane in this episode bond as well because of the fact that they're both nerds playing the game. He's kind of a chameleon. He can shift and shape. I like Carson as a kid and as a character, the Tom Holland of the Survivor, coming in here, getting his weaves webbed. Is that the web's weaved? Something like that. Going to the end of the game. I love seeing it, but I'm very fearful for him that people are going to see, he's this lovable kid. We get this great connections with him, and then in the end, he stabs them, and they're not going to be able to get over that. So, Peridiam, can you see some of the parallels between potentially like a Carson and a Mike in the game? Because Mike was actually not a bad player. His biggest flaw was the fact that he created such deep bonds with people before he cut them.
I get a little bit of Carson is like a combo of like Omer and Spencer almost from 42, Omer and then Spencer Bledsoe, where he's this like young chipper lad who's just very excitable, and he loves to just talk and do strategy. And even when like Matthew's complaining about his shoulder and it launches into Carson's like, this is really good for my game. And he's just like, let me explain all the connections I have strategically. And I'm like, wow, Carson is honestly set up really well. I don't worry about Carson. I don't think Carson's going anywhere anytime soon. He looks like he's set up to go deep. But then again, the worry is he a Mike Turner? I feel like he could be like an Omer, where he's this strategic force, but falls short.
I think, I don't know. I think people are going to kind of catch on to him. We already kind of saw that with Carolyn. Carolyn was kind of on to him, saying
it could be the Ryan Ulrich, if you guys remember that guy.
I remember him,
Oh, man. I remember 35 was the first season I watched live, and I remember...
I just want to say, I think Carson is... I think he's a more capable player than Ryan. I feel like Ryan was very... Like he was good strategically,
really early.
Yeah, he peaked really early, but I feel like Carson is proving that on his own he can flourish, where Ryan always needed people around him.
Yeah, I also think there was like a social disconnect with Ryan, where we saw him get to the end and he was just kind of like, the jury was just didn't really care. They liked him as a person, but they're like, you just didn't really get much from you strategically. You didn't have a strong sense of character, or your story to get here wasn't very impressive. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can see that. I'm very interested to see where Carson's story is going to go. We haven't spoken much about Kane. Kane finally finding that person in the game that he can relate to, because he's kind of on an island on his own. And I've got to say, from the moment that I saw him wielding the sword around and nearly breaking the prop, I was all in. I was all in on Kane. He's probably my favorite underdog currently in the game, and I really hope he finds his home when they get to the merge with the more nerdy bunch, and they it's interesting. We've got these we've got this theme between like almost like the cool kids and the non-cool kids playing out this season again. And I feel like that's going to come to a head when we get to the merge.
Yeah, I was lumping in. I said like Carson, Carolyn, Jem, Kane. Possibly we get the Franny Matt combo, but I could see them like meshing with them, even though they're from another tribe and they've never met. I'm looking at the group right now of these 12 people, and I'm like, I could see those 6 definitely sticking together, and they've gotten a lot of screen time, and I don't know, I'd be happy for it. I'd be cheering for that group if that was to happen versus Danny, Brandon, Lauren, Josh, Jamie, Heidi, you know. It's given we'll call him.
I like Danny in that group, but I feel like Danny is just.
I like Danny too, but this episode for me cemented where he's likely going to fall come a merge.
Yeah.
And I didn't love it, and I'm looking at it like this might be their Achilles heel. And it's Carolyn, of all people, is the one that they underestimate. And they're like, you haven't really proven yourself yet in challenges. And I'm like, oh, you guys have no idea what's been going on in Tika. Like, Carolyn has more than proven herself.
And I just want to add, I could see this happening because we spoke about it last week. I feel like Carson is the glue that kept Yam Yam and Carolyn together. And with him being out, they kind of fractured a little bit. So when they get to a merge situation where Carson is back in the mix, it's going to pull the 3 of them back together. And now Carson is bringing in a number in Kane. And they can continue to work from there to get maybe Matt and Franny in as well, because they have to feel like they're kind of on the outs a little bit. Franny didn't get her way when she tried to save Claire in the vote. And Matt ended up, being betrayed by Danny when he found the fake idol. So I feel like there's potential for them to work. And we've seen in the new age of Survivor that people are willing to work in voting blocks. They're willing to jump over to other places. They won't necessarily stay with the tribe that they were with going into the merge, and they can still find their way to the end of the game in doing that. So I'm very excited for it. I think that the merge part of the game forward could be very interesting. I wanted to just add on Danny. Love Danny, love his energy, love what he's doing in the game. I feel like Danny is like, he's from a different era playing Survivor. Like, I mean, he's from that era where if he was to play between season 28 to maybe 40, he would have done so well in the game. But playing in this new era of Survivor, I don't know if he fits it completely.
You made the 2 goalposts, the 2 seasons were Tony.
I was going to point out,
100%,
there's a very noticeable observation there for our Survivor geeks. 28 and 40, interesting picks. Yeah, he does give off Tony vibes, doesn't he? I also think he this is going to seem like a out of left field comparison. And I think he's much better than this player. But it reminded me when he said in this episode, when he's sitting there with Brandon and Carolyn, and he said, like, the physical guys are the guys who don't tend to do well, or they tend to get picked off. I'm like, clearly you've missed the last 5 or 6 seasons other than 41 and 42. But it kind of gives me shades of Brad Culpepper in Blood versus Water, where he's talking about how the John Cochrans of the world do well in Survivor because John Cochran won the last season. But I'm like, in what world is Boston Rob and Kim and, like, I guess Sophie is the only comparable one, Denise, Fabio, like, these are not the John Cochrans of Survivor winning the game. Sandra, I'm not. So I'm like, when Danny's like, I'm like, Danny, I don't trust that read whatsoever. And not only that, but you're burning like Carolyn, who's like literally has oranges falling out of her mouth. She's so dumbfounded.
From 35 to 40, basically that exact archetype won every season.
Right. I'm like, Danny, you literally could be a winner in 35 to 40. Like, you might as well have been a winner. That ship has sailed, buddy. Even Gabler, I would not say, is like, we've had 3 very unique winners now, and they haven't seen Gabler win, so he's only working on 41 and 42. Mm-hmm. I think they saw Marianne win. This cast did see Marianne win.
I believe so.
They did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, it just made me laugh. I loved hearing that when they're like, we're the threats, the physicality. We don't usually win the game. I'm like, well, I don't know about that. Like Brad Culpepper, I don't know about that. Mm-hmm. But
let's attack this question here. Jay's asking, who are you guys' top 3 players who are set up to do well come the merge time? Jake, we'll start with you. Who are the 3 players you'd say keep an eye on?
So, like, for me, easily Carson.
Yep.
I feel I almost think, like, when I'm watching next episode, I'm just looking for what Carson does and who he works with. I think Carson might be the glue of it all of this next episode. That's my read. He's giving me like, what is Omer going to be doing in 42's merge? He controlled it all. I almost feel like Carson has so many connections and he's set up well.
It's almost like a web, right?
He's got Tika. It's like a web. It's almost like a little Tom Holland.
Yeah.
He's connecting everyone, bringing them together. He's got Ratu. He's got Tika. And so I wonder what that means for Soka. But that's who I feel like beyond Carson, I'm not sure. So I'm curious to hear who you guys have. If you could put top three.
Yeah, well, Jake, who would you put in? I'm assuming you would agree Carson is in the top three as well.
Carson for sure. Honestly, Carolyn, like,
yeah,
she just has a good read on stuff, and I think that she got an idol. I think honestly, Carson he's gonna want to bring Carolyn along. I think he sees her as his goat.
And it could be the wrong read, but he might be thinking
because he wanted to play with her and Jam Jam, because he said it was more fun. But I think it was more so he thinks he could control them more, in my opinion. But I don't think that's a good read on his part. But that doesn't mean he's not set up well right now. He's got a lot of connections, which is kind of the currency right now.
Yeah.
Man, I don't really.
The third one's hard because I'll tell you what, Yam Yam for me could easily be put in there. We could say, Tika's just going to dominate because they've been getting a lot of airtime. Yam Yam's been getting a lot of airtime, but he's just a big character. So I think he would have always gotten some airtime before the merge, and he's attached to Carolyn. So by default, he was going to get some content. The problem that I have with Yam Yam is I don't feel like he's had his ability at this time in the game to stretch his strategic muscle. Like, I haven't seen much from him in regards to that. He's always been a part of a vote or a plan, but then again, Carolyn kind of outsmarted him in the previous round. So I don't know if I can put him in my top three at this stage as of yet, even though I did find it very interesting that I felt like the edit wanted us to get behind him when him and Carolyn went up against each other. But that's more of the edit side of things. I want to put at least one person from the other side in this, if we're going into the final, because what happens if, we do see certain things going wrong, but that side do still end up somehow getting over the Nerd Squad, if we're going to call them that, at the merge. I do think that someone like Danny could still be in the top three. Yes, he made a mistake here. Yes, he did end up maybe, making Carolyn feel like she's on the outside. But it's not like we haven't seen winners do these kind of things before or make bad calls along the way. And then, Tony's a great example in Kageyama, where he sometimes felt like, he didn't do the right thing here. But he was able and good enough to work harder than everybody else to mend bridges and get social games back in place. The thing is, could Heidi be Danny's, Trish in this moment? Because that's really what he needs. He needs that Trish character to help him mend bridges with the likes of a Carolyn moving forward in the game. And we have seen that those two are very close and that they're probably the closest in that alliance together. So I'm still willing. I'm not completely off the Danny train yet. I'll still throw him in there as a potential wild card in the top three because it could go either way.
Yeah, I would pick, I think I'm looking at the names. I'd say Carson, Danny, and Carolyn. And that's like one from each tribe, one who I think is like probably doing the best on their tribe. So I feel like those three doesn't mean we couldn't lose one of them, but I do feel like there's a couple of different, I'm looking at the layout of these relationships that we've seen. And I feel like there's only a couple of different paths. I feel like this merge is going to go. And I feel like Carson's really the linchpin, I think. I'm not sure what Soka's going to do exactly, but it looks like they want to link up, or Danny wants to link them up with Ratu. But with Matthew going and Carson being so connected with, it's like, will Carson burn Carolyn and Jam Jam, or will he pick them up and create something strong out of that? That's probably more winnable than going with Danny and Brandon and Lauren and Josh.
And I feel like he's going to want to keep a relationship with Kane. And I feel like Kane's kind of going to be hesitant to go with.
Kane's a number with that. With the
100%.
Tikas. Yeah.
And
then I wonder, like, and Kane is aware of it. He literally says in the episode, "I've been the target," and it's like, oh, he's very he gets it. Okay, he got the memo. I wasn't 100% sure exactly where if he was aware that like he had the numbers against him, and if they lost, he probably is the one who's going home. And then I'm like, what's Soka? Soka's the one tribe where I'm like, okay, based on this, where do Heidi and Franny and Matt, do they go with Danny? They had this 4 against Josh. If Danny wants to bring in Josh, does that push somebody out of the mix? Does Heidi fall out of the mix, fall out of the boat? Does the showmance, the flirtmance, do they go to the opposite route? Because I feel like they would jive better with the Carolyn, Carson, Kane side of it all, with the way that they are shown. But
I want to bring up I want to bring up that, you brought up a point earlier in the podcast where you said that they kind of made Josh aware that he probably was going home. The fact that Carolyn was very open about the fact, oh, you're part of the Meat Boy Alliance over there. I can't work with that. So Josh is going to take that information back to Brandon and to Danny when he gets into the merge, which means that Carolyn could very easily be that target where they're like, oh, well, she's not going to work with us. We need to target her. I don't think they've got the votes to split it. If the others come together. So that could be a danger for them. And plus, Carolyn's got Idol in her possession that no one knows about. So we could see an Idol play at the very first merge episode.
I feel like we've been missing those in this modern era. I do think that might be why Jeff is throwing these idols out there. He wants more Idol plays. 41, 42, and 43 have had it's been like a desert for good Idol plays. So I wonder if that's partially what's encouraging him to idols, fake idols, shot clock idols. Give them all. It's like candy on Halloween.
Isn't it ironic? Isn't it ironic how we've gotten to a place now where there's more advantages than ever? More things happening in the game, but less plays happening from all these. It's almost like it's counterintuitive what he's doing, throwing so many idols out there because
they just hoard them.
They just hoard them. They're like, we're not gonna, because there's also the counter argument where players probably think, well, if I play this willy-nilly, it's going to be back in the game and it could land in someone else's hands. And I don't want that. I would rather want to know where the advantages are in the game.
Also, I think I watch, I don't know, do you guys ever watch, I doubt Chris, you watch it, but do you ever watch Big Brother US?
I've seen it, yeah.
You've seen it? There's a thing, the producers love to rock the boat a lot on that show and try to disrupt the social alliances and all that. And what ends up happening again and again and again is that it creates tighter bonds between people and the gameplay becomes a little bit more stale and not as fluid. It actually solidifies things because they have so much unpredictability and instability in the game that they don't know what to expect. So they basically hunker down and create a big, we call them onion alliances, but they're just groups of hordes of people that steamroll, losing people along the way. And that's kind of what you get when you create so much randomness in games. You can't, the players don't
control the controllables, the few controllables that you have, control it. And
control it, keep it in your pocket. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was the biggest Big Brother US fan for years. Dr. Will Kirby is my favorite player of all time, of any reality TV show.
Well, I
love Dr. Will Kirby. But I've started losing interest in it since the second All-Star season, and I haven't really gotten back into Big Brother.
A few years ago then.
It's only a few years ago.
Okay.
So because for me, it just got to the point where it became too predictable in what players do in the game and how they create these big alliances.
Did you watch the last season? Last year?
I started watching the first couple of episodes for the first couple of weeks. I know who actually won, and I'm so happy for the person who won because where I saw she got bullied in the game quite a lot, and I got
the first couple of weeks was really rough. Do you know the journey to get there? Because I'd say that season is like a breath of fresh air for the most part.
I'll go back and watch it because
it doesn't have the same. A lot of modern Big Brother has the same pitfalls, and I worry that sometimes I before 41 I was on a podcast and I think Russell Hance showed up and we were talking about the potential wackiness that could show up with the new era and what might happen. And I was like, if I've seen this on Big Brother, and what could happen with Survivor is it actually creates less interesting gameplay because people are afraid of falling out of the boat. And so what they do is they actually do the opposite of creating fast-paced, fluid gameplay. I don't think that's happened yet on Survivor. Also, they can just edit around it if they want to, whereas on Big Brother, we usually have the live feed, so we can see that it's actually really boring. But anyway.
It's interesting you bring this up because my argument, touching on Australian Survivor, again, it's hard not to when you've watched all the Australian shows as well, but I had a conversation with the winner of Blood vs. Water. I won't spoil it for everybody else, and I actually interviewed that person on the channel, and they got to the end and people were frustrated that people didn't make a move against them. They won in a very similar fashion, in my mind, to like a Boston Rob or a Kim Spradlin because they just had so much hold on the game. But a lot of it was because they were scared to make a move against this person because of non-eliminations and some of these twists coming in. And they're like, well, we're scared to make this move because what if this person comes back? So that's where non-eliminations and twists sometimes can make it so that people actually hold back. And I had that confirmed by other players that played in that season, that was the biggest reason they didn't try to flush idols or make moves earlier, because they saw big moves being made and those players not going home. And then the players who made the big moves ended up worse off because of it, and they ended up going home. So it kind of scared people from going against the power structure. So I agree with you. Sometimes twists, sometimes doing too much can actually disincentivize players when it comes to actually playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's also some tricky balancing where I understand Jeff when he says, like, we don't want the players to ever get ahead of us or ahead of the game, because then the game gets predictable. And I do agree on some, and especially with Survivor, where it's a little bit simpler in that you just need more numbers on the other side and you can get to the end. If you have 4 and they have 3, well, you can go to the final 4. The problem is that there's no such thing as a final 4. There's only 3 people go to the jury. So who's the 4th person on the out? And that's what we see time and again. You don't want people to stick like with the Kims and the Boston Rob alliances where they have a solid and they just go to the final 6, final 5, final 4. That's boring. You need to shake it up, and you better hope. So like if you throw in Jeff's, I think thinking like if we throw in a lot of advantages, well, sure, this person has an idol, but the other person has an idol nullifier. And so that creates a back and forth where, or they have the knowledge is power where somebody at the bottom can steal an idol, and it allows like, you cannot just like Kim had an idol her whole season, and it didn't allow the bottom to ultimately topple, change the hierarchy at all. I guess they sort of tried a little bit.
I think there's a balance. There's a balance to be found in the game. Like I said earlier in the podcast.
I don't think there's a perfect formula though. I will say I don't think there's a perfect formula. I don't give Jeff too much flack. I don't love it when the episode is like jam-packed with advantages. I think you need, like you said at the beginning, less is more. And I think just give us little bits throughout the years. Like, we're not in a rush to get the inheritance advantage out the door or the knowledge is power or whatever. Like, give it to us one season at a time, and it'll work itself out. It'll create interesting because sorry. Yeah, okay. And I loved it. I just want to say I loved this episode. This was like, I wouldn't say a top 10, but for me in the modern era, this episode here was one of my favorites I've watched in a long time. I know there are some people on Twitter I've seen that I know that I talk to weekly were giving it like this could have been an email episode. And I'm like, send me that email because I will read that email. Like, I love this. I live for the laughs. I live for the jokes. There's a little bit of strategy. This was like everything I could ask for. It wasn't overloaded with advantages. Nobody needs the producers giving out advantages every episode. We don't. I agree. I actually love that we got the sanctuary. It was this unique social twist because what we saw was Jam Jam and Carolyn come back and they compare notes, and Jam Jam's like, I don't believe you. Like, she's like, we didn't get anything. He's like, you got something. What did you get? She's like, I did not get anything. I promise you. It was just hang out and eat. He's like, you're telling me you went to the island and you just hung out and ate food? That sounds like the lie. That sounds like such a lie. But it's not. It's actually true, and that's what's so fun about it. Like they're expecting it to be not that.
Shout out to Survivor South Africa Return of the Outcast that also had a Survivor Sanctuary where people went to go and have a chat. So I feel like it, even though Jeff didn't see it,
but there was no advantages, no ransacking, just a fun social sit down that is going to foreshadow the merge. And I love that. It's great storytelling. Yes. It's not like, here's random advantages that are going to have no effect on anything except to eat the next few minutes of our time while somebody reads out a piece of paper telling us how it works when we don't even need to know about it. Anyway, that's more frustrations that I could do any episode for the most part. But I love this episode a lot. I would say it was one of my favorite episodes from the new era, but ultimately it's probably one of my favorites in general.
Yeah, so Chris is saying, strong disagree that this was an email episode. This was fun. Let's not hate on episodes of TV. Russell Muscle here in the live saying that he's ranking our LED game, Peridiam number 1.
I am lacking for sure.
Are we going to really shame the one guy that's still a student? Come on, Russell.
Yeah, don't do that. I definitely didn't have LEDs back then, so
yeah. So don't feel bad.
I do. I'm definitely winning the statue.
You do have a statue.
I have a statue.
Is that an idol? So. Is that a hidden idol in plain sight? Can I?
Or it's a fake
it? Can I do the
Adam
Klein? Can I do the Adam Klein reach in there and grab it? No, listen, I think it was a great episode. I mean, obviously some people would not be happy that there isn't an outcome at the end of it, but I felt like in the way that it worked, it was perfect. We don't lose 3 great characters in the game. I actually do still like Josh. I think there's something that he can still bring to the merge.
2 episodes ago, I didn't know anything about this guy, and now I'm like, I can't not have him on the show. I'm so happy he made it.
It's so funny because when I saw he was getting like no content at all in the first couple episodes, then I saw that he is getting switched onto a tribe by himself, and I'm like, oh, that's why, because he gets swap screwed or twist screwed or whatever. But that's actually not what happened, and I am really, really curious to see how it plays out with like him thinking he was all good on Soka, but that is not the case. You know,
I mean,
I'm yeah.
It ends with I love like the ending with Josh where he's like he does the clap, but then he immediately goes back. Is like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, that was not great. Like,
Yeah.
and then they hug and they're like, yeah, we don't have to vote anyone out. And then Carolyn's like, oh, I would have voted you out. He's like, I know. And it's just.
It wasn't even high to get.
I know.
All right, we've got one more order of business here that we need to get into. And Peridiam, what we do is we do a draft here on the channel every season. Jake is the defending champion. He had the Ali Gabler in his team last season and won the draft. But the draft this season is interesting because we've got a third player, Kahuna, who's also my co-host for Australian Survivor, who will be on the channel from this week forward. We're doing power rankings as a bonus episode every week as well. So Kahuna will be doing power rankings with me, and Jake will continue to be on the actual recap and reviews with guests here on the channel. But Kahuna's killing us at the moment with the amount of players he still has in the game. He's got Carson, Carolyn, and Danny. Those are the three players we said are in our top three.
I know.
Oh my gosh, he's got a lot. That's a stacked group of 5.
I think I'm out. Like at least
tough.
like for the winner.
Jake,
the winner
really
is
rough.
gone.
I think Lauren could still win. I think Lauren's got a very similar Erica trajectory at the moment. You know, got a little bit of content in the beginning. She's disappearing for a while. She could come back and be the winner.
Chris,
you can't count out.
That's true.
My saving grace was Matthew.
Yeah,
he
Matthew
was in such a great spot if it weren't for his freaking shoulder.
Yeah, he was killing it for you points-wise. But Brandon's actually only 1 point behind Matthew at this point. And it's weird because it feels like we haven't seen much of Brandon, but he's still around. And we have seen a backstory for him. I don't know why. Like, we know what his backstory is.
He's
in the
a
game.
Renaissance man.
Yeah, Renaissance man, you know, a little bit of everything. So who knows? You may still have an outside chance, but I do feel it's going to be tough for you to win. It's going to have to be, again, one of those whodunit type of wins for you if you get one of those players winning at this stage.
It's Jamie's going to make it to the end, and she's just going to say, like, I was awesome.
I would like to think, Peridiam, I manifested the whole Matt Franny relationship thing because I picked them without knowing that they were going to be in a back-to-back as well. Yeah. So, but let's look at the points. So how it works with the draft here, we give 1 point for confessionals, 5 points for team challenge wins, 8 points for individual immunity wins when we get to the individual stage, 5 points for making the merge, 10 points for a successful advantage play. It would be great to see one of those this season. 5 points for finding an advantage, minus 0.5 for votes against you, and then the runner-up gets 25 points and the winner gets 50. And there's also bonus categories at the end of the season that we'll get into for most confessionals, individual immunity wins, advantages found, least votes casted against them, and most advantages played. So there is a bit of math that goes into this and how we do the points. At this stage, in last place is myself still. I've been 3 weeks in a row in last place. I'm on 140 points with my team, 0.5. You are in second place, Jake, just ahead of me at 158. And Kahuna's killing it at 198. So he is well and truly in the lead at this stage. So I feel like it's either, you know, like you said, if you're not going to take it, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on my shoulders to bring the win in.
The top 3 that we were just talking about.
I know, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. So the top point getters so far for this season, you guys wouldn't believe it. I almost didn't myself, but Josh at 48 points in total. I guess he did play an advantage in the idol, saved him. So that was 10 points in the previous round. He's had 19 confessionals. He's had 3 challenge wins so far and 2 votes casted against him. He is at the moment the highest on our point system at 48. Second is a draw between Matt and Danny, both at 39. And then in third place is Brandon at 38. So Brandon does still have a little bit of an outside chance there as well. He obviously also played an idol, but that idol also saved him early on in the game there as well in that spot. So that's all the points. In fact, now that I see it, I haven't actually added that point to you. You're slightly higher. You're at 168. So that is the point system there. Any thoughts on the draft and how we're doing it, Peridiam?
No, I mean, it makes sense. I used to do a draft a while ago before I had my channel, and I ended up having something similar with the point systems and the setup, but no, it looks good.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested to see how the season's gonna play out, and who knows? Maybe in a future season we get you in on it. You know, get you in on some of the draft stuff if you're interested in it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've done it before. I haven't done it lately. I've just focused on my channel. But yeah, people love Survivor drafts. I remember doing it back in the day. This is like the early 20 seasons of US Survivor, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, Peridiam, let people know. I mean, obviously, most people that are coming here, they already know your channel, but let them know, what are you up to? What's happening on your channel? Where can they find you? And what are you doing over the next coming weeks?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Peridiam, probably on the screen, but either way, I'm mostly just on YouTube. I do tweet occasionally. I'll live tweet episodes. Yeah, I've got a couple of interesting video topics coming out. One of them I'm breaking down. It's one of the longest videos I've ever made, maybe the longest without on its own. It's almost like over 50 minutes. It's looking at the Survivor iceberg, actually, which is like all the behind the scenes stuff.
That's cool.
Which
That's
is
really
gonna have
cool.
it's
Yeah.
gonna have Gargoyle Jeff currently on the thumbnail, so that's gonna be a fun one.
Is he at the tip, or is he
So like
in
I
the-
put it on,
the
I put it on.
trenches?
I was thinking he was gonna be like in the like fading like a phantom looking over it, like it's the whole empire of Survivor and the behind the scenes stuff. But then I realized I liked him out in front on the thing because it makes for an amusing thumbnail. And then I was like, the way that he's got his hands, I ended up sticking. Currently, I don't know if I'm gonna go with it, but he's got Boston Rob's hat in one hand and Rupert's tie-dye shirt in the other hand, and it looks like he's holding them over an iceberg. Yeah. And I just thought this is really amusing. I'm just amused by it, so I might just roll with that.
That's really good.
Have you ever thought about doing the evolution of Jeff Probst on your channel?
I have thought about making a video about just Jeff. I haven't done it, but it's a topic. I'm like, yeah, I would need to tread lightly though, because I know Jeff is like, that's like poking the guy. Yeah, he's the biggest of them all. I don't want to rub him the wrong. I'm not interested in that. Like at the end of the day, so
I get it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
And listen, I just want to say once again, Jeff doesn't listen to this podcast. Definitely, he's not going to get into this point. But just in case he does, like. And also for me, when I criticize or I go, and I always try and be fair and I try and balance it because I've really enjoyed his podcast. I see the passion he has for the show. It is because I want the show to be better. It comes from a place of, I hope he looks at it as constructive criticism, not, Jeff, you're this horrible person. Because I know in his heart, he believes what he's doing for the show at all times is the best thing.
You can't really see it very well.
There we go.
But this is generally the look of it. Oh, there you go. He's holding Boston Rob's hat and Rupert's tie-dye shirt. It's so much fun.
Be sure to look out for that. Be sure to look out for that.
I've been making thumbnails for the past 2 days. It's like the highlight of the whole video. It's just making the cover art.
I've always liked your thumbnails personally.
I put a lot of hours into them. They're honestly, it's like it's a little art project for me. So finding out unique ways to flare them
Creative
up.
outlet.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, certainly I put out a new video every Wednesday, and that's where I'm at. Every single Wednesday, a new video.
Great. Well, go check out, if for any reason you didn't know that Peridiam existed, which I'd be very shocked, go check it out on YouTube under Peridiam. He's got great content out there. And also, please consider subscribing to this channel. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers. So, modest beginnings, but we've been doing so well with the Australian season. We've had a lot of people show additional interest in the channel. So if you're sort of been hanging around, you've been listening to this quite a lot, but you've been unsure and you haven't been willing to commit, I hope that today is the day that we've earned your subscription by clicking on the subscribe button, put a like on it, hit the notification bell so you can know when we go live next. We still have some great guests coming up in the coming weeks as well. I've spoken to Mike Gabler, I've spoken to Nasir, I've spoken to the likes of Snuffed. Snuff might be coming back and doing a channel because he hasn't actually done anything in over a year, but we might have him on the channel as well as Russell Muscle and Flynn Masters, who were in the group chat today as well, will all be guests within the season. So please look out for that. But for now, guys, grab your torches, head back to camp. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye.